Hello, once again, Dr. Blake Myers here, naturopathic physician, author of the Bridge System Guidebook and Method to a Healthy Transition Through Perimenopause and Menopause using natural medicine approaches. And one thing that if you've been researching menopause at all, you've probably come across that inflammation and oxidative stress tend to increase as you go through menopause. And the reason for this is largely tied to estrogen and the decline of estrogen and the way that estrogen impacts your immune system. So certain immune cells will start to change kind of the messages basically that they're putting out when estrogen gets lower. And during this time of estrogen decline and the immune system changing, inflammation can increase. So it's one of the things that we really need to consider when you're going through menopause to do approaches that will balance your immune system and therefore balance the inflammatory response, because it's not just that there's immune system changes going on. There's the potential that maybe your blood sugar is becoming a little bit more unwieldy and it's a little bit more elevated than it used to be. That will increase inflammation potentially and oxidative stress. There can be, as I've talked about, maybe some decline in muscle mass depending on where you're at in the process, and that maybe potentially could contribute to inflammation. And so there's lots of pieces that may be contributing to the inflammatory responses. So we really want a holistic approach to try to balance your immune system. There's lots that I could talk about on this, but I think what I would like to focus on is, for one, consider everything I've already talked about. Consider all the things that I talked about with the gut and the microbiome and fiber and fermented foods. Because if you remember in there, I mentioned how the gut microbiome, it regulates in a large part, it regulates your immune system. So much of your immune system is surrounding your gut. And it's one of the biggest interfaces with the world, okay? And things coming in from the outside world. So your immune system has to read what's going on and regulate. And so there's a lot of immune system there, and the healthy gut bacteria regulate a lot of that. So that's really probably number one that I would consider. And then you also want to consider the discussion that we had about resistance training and building muscle, because that's very important for all the reasons that I said as well. But those are lifestyle kinds of approaches, and then the gut microbiome is connected to diet as well. But also with diet, we just need to consider the foundational aspects that create a balanced inflammatory response in your body. Most people get the message that inflammation is bad, full stop. And it's just because it's kind of the way it's talked about. But a lot of times what's being talked about in that is chronic inflammation that's going on. It's kind of like a slow smoldering fire, and over time that is what contributes to cardiovascular disease and hormonal dysregulation and problems, other problems in the immune system as well, and issues with the adrenal gland system and all kinds of different things. So chronic inflammation is what is typically talked about with that. Inflammation is actually your body's healing response. Inflammation is required for survival, but when we get injured or we get sick, that's the acute inflammatory response. So we're supposed to have that happen, and inflammation is supposed to happen to deal with issues that are going on, and then it's supposed to come back to a balanced state. In chronic inflammation, for different reasons, you can get elevations in the inflammation that maybe it's not as strong as a big acute response, like when you're sick with the flu or something, but you've still got an imbalance. So you can think anti-inflammatory on this side, inflammatory on this side, and it's just kind of like should be doing this thing. Is one way to think about it. Should be balanced. So the diet is one of the most important and foundational pieces of how you keep your immune system balanced. It's in part because of the gut microbiome, but there are a lot of phytonutrients, so plant nutrients. Phyto means plant, so plant nutrients that stimulate your body's own anti-inflammatory and antioxidant mechanisms. There are a lot of vitamins and minerals in plants that your immune system needs to function optimally. some of these nutrients I thought I would mention. I don't get too hyper focused on nutrients when I talk about the diet, because I want the diet to just be a whole holistic picture, and not thinking like, oh, I need to just eat so much of these foods because there's so many of these nutrients. But it is kind of interesting and helpful sometimes, I think, to know this. And so vitamin A and D, really important. And especially, for these reasons, vitamin D is definitely one that's really important during menopause. So vitamin A and D are really important, but minerals like magnesium and selenium are really important. And getting enough protein with these things as well. So an anti-inflammatory diet is what you see that I put together with the Celerate diet, and then moving into with the phase 2 diet. That's a very anti-inflammatory diet, whether it's the Celerate diet or building upon the Celerate diet and including grains, then whole grains and other things that you start to add back in. But in addition to that, for menopause, you'll notice in the book that I focus on phytoestrogens. So that's another piece that's menopause specific, that I focus on phytoestrogens. But all of that together, the way that I talk about the diet in there and what I recommend, that's all very anti-inflammatory. So you want to think about whole foods. You want to think about diversity of plants and just diversity of foods in general. And you want to think about having enough of each of the main nutrient categories that I mentioned. In some of the previous emails, I talked about protein. We talked about complex carbohydrates and fiber. So getting enough of those in a day, and making sure you're focused on whole foods, and decreasing processed foods, and some of the aspects that I talk about in the Celerate diet that are decreased. Those are really foundational, and those go a long way. So even if you focus on nothing else, focusing on the quality of the food and the type of food you're putting in your body will start to make a huge difference. And you can see energy go up, brain fog improve, weight loss improve, sleep issues can get better, so many different things. So those are like kind of the foundational things that I would talk about in my practice. Would be the diet, be talking about building muscle, be talking about gut health. So if you find this helpful, please share it with somebody, share the YouTube channel, subscribe, and share the guidebook with somebody, the Bridge System. And if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them down below the video, and we're happy to answer those. And I'll answer questions that are new topics we haven't covered. I'll do a video on it for you if you want. And thanks for taking us on your journey. Talk soon.